Hello, I'm Matt Forde and welcome to Unspun. Weeks like this really make you wonder about the world and what sort of place it is. Like the rest of the country, I'm in total shock and my heart goes out to the families and friends of the victims of the awful attack in Manchester. It comes at a time when the things that divide us felt like they were getting more coverage than the things that unite us. Whatever divisions existed between us all before that attack, they're put into perspective now, and politics feels very insignificant at a time like this. All political parties have suspended campaigning in a sign of national unity, and the outcome of any election I was obsessing over couldn't feel less important. I think that most of us just wonder what we should be doing. We're full of grief and we don't know what to do with it, and we feel powerless. But the most powerful thing we can do is carry on. Yesterday, Manchester City Council tweeted this. Despite the appalling events at the Manchester Arena last night, the city is open for business. Those people trying to sow fear will not succeed. Manchester is open for business and so are we, and our business is making fun of politicians. So in that spirit, we're going to carry on with the show, we're going to cover the latest on the election and other news from around the world, and later on, I'll be joined by ex-Home Secretary Jacqui Smith, someone who had first-hand experience of dealing with terror attacks in Britain. So when you're in need of something to laugh about, where better to start than Tim Farron? There was an awkward moment for the Lib Dem leader this week when his conscience took human form and started following him around. Elsewhere this week, Max Mosley has donated £300,000 to the Labour Party. Mosley infamously had sadomasochistic sex with prostitutes. It's painful and humiliating, he said, of his donation to the Labour Party. And CIA sources play down reports that the First Lady may have been replaced by a Saudi spy. Still to come on Unspun, we've got the latest from our Asia correspondent Phil Wang, and as always, alongside me, it's my house band of politicians and guest musicians. They're going to take you to Funky Town because it's a key marginal. It's MP4. Now, as in recent shows, Kev, Greg and Pete are with us, so deputising for them tonight. On drums we have former political advisor Ian Moss. On guitar, Lord Wood of Anfield. On keys from Maximo Park, it's Lukas Wooller. And on bass, as always, ex-Labour MP Ian Cawsey. In global news, Donald Trump visited the West Bank this week and is still trying to find the cash machines. It's time to hear from the man himself about his travels.
Hello, everybody. Hello. I've had a lot of criticism this week, folks. A lot of criticism. It keeps on coming. I get criticized more than any other president in history. Do you know, no one criticized Nixon on Twitter during Watergate. It's true. We've been back to the internet. It's total silence, folks. But they target me. They target me because they're jealous of what I have with Melania and Ivanka. We say Melania doesn't want to hold my hand. How immature, by the way, are these people? Actually, I don't want to touch her hand because girls have fleas, and if you touch one, it means you're a girl, too. People need to grow up. I went to the Vatican. I was let in by the Swiss guard. I said to them, you guys are lost. This is Italy. So sad. We saw the Sistine Chapel. Incredible ceiling, by the way. It was painted by two dudes called Michelangelo. I love Jello. I love the Pope. I met that guy, too. As you know, he's the son of God. That means you can do great deals with him. I enjoy my time in Israel. It's a real Mecca for the Jews. I went to the Wailing Wall. Great wall. The wall is so beautiful. Almost as beautiful as Ivanka. Part of their old temple. I said, I hope the Mexicans paid for this. Okay, folks, I gotta go. Thank you so much. Thank
The Theresa May party had a wobble this week after launching a manifesto that had about as much good news in it as a wartime telegram. Their policy on social care was dubbed a dementia tax, and has been particularly controversial, not just with Labour, but also with Tories. On the doorstep, it went down like a sack of potatoes. No, a lead balloon. What's the phrase?
The social care policy and also the winter fuel allowance means testing had gone down, and I quote, like a bucket of dog sick.
Bucket of dog sick. It turns out telling parents they might not be able to pass on their house to their child isn't that popular. Politics, eh? So what did the Prime Minister, by her own words, a bloody difficult woman, do in the face of this first whiff of resistance? Tough it out?
The Conservatives have performed a rapid climb down over their central manifesto pledge on social care.
Theresa May said she was just clarifying facts, but today she was accused of the most humiliating U-turn in the election so far.
She U-turned quicker than Nigel Farage walking into a gay bar. But it was too late. The damage was done. She closed the strong and stable door after the horse had bolted. Thank God she hadn't put any ministers on TV the day before to say the complete opposite.
People hate this policy, and it makes them very, very nervous indeed. Is there any chance at all you're going to look at it again?
No.
The Prime Minister tried to wriggle out of the problem, denying it was a U-turn and instead calling it a clarification. Can you smell that? Is that bullshit? The Prime Minister tried to reassure the public by calmly explaining the situation.
We have not changed the principles of the policy that we set out in our manifesto. Nothing has changed. Nothing has changed.
Nothing says strong and stable like going, nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. In an attempt to draw a line under the matter, Theresa May decided to reassert her strongest message, herself.
I called an election several weeks ago. I called an election on this whole issue of trust.
It's all about trust. At least on the big issues, we know we can trust what Theresa May says.
Under you, is that absolutely certain, that we're not going to see an election before 2020?
I'm not going to be calling a snap election.
It wasn't just the Theresa May party announcing policy. The Green Party unveiled their manifesto this week. It contains two eye-catching announcements. They're going to give every adult £80 a week to spend on whatever we want and legalise prostitution. Two policies they swear are unrelated. Now, if you're going to invite the national media to your launch event, make sure it's not so boring that even your own members fall asleep. Look at the guy on the left.
And we want to have that debate with you about the kind of answers to these major questions we face today. This election is about what kind of future we want for our children. It is about protecting our values of openness, of compassion, of cooperation.
Mum? Fellas, obviously Theresa May had a wobble on social care this week. Ian, you've studied numerous elections, you've been involved in many more. Do you remember any wobbles you've had or any gaffes along the way?
My ultimate wobble was 2010. It was the election I lost. I was in a highly marginal seat, big campaign HQ, lots of Labour people in. I turned up halfway through the campaign one morning and there was nobody there. And so I rang the Labour Party HQ and I said, what's happened? They said, oh, they've gone down to help Head Balls because there's something there today. I said, oh, coming back tomorrow? And then, no. And I knew then that not even the Labour Party thought I was going to win.
Oh, it seems very brutal. How much did you lose by?
5,000.
All right, well...
So...
Probably made the right decision. Ian, thank you. Kim Jong-un launched another medium-range ballistic missile this week, despite the UN Security Council demanding that no further such tests take place. Scary, but nice to know that world leaders also ignore letters from the Council. We can cross to our Asia correspondent now. It's always sad when we have to say ciao. Main reason is he's so funny. It's Phil Wang.
Thank you, Matt. Ah, Asia, the only place with more Thai ladyboys than your dad's hard drive. I'm Phil Wang, and this is Asia News. Yes, Matt, North Korea has test-launched another missile that has fallen into the sea, its 10th this year, marking the most protracted and disappointing fireworks display in history. North Korea has celebrated the test as a success. However, it is important to keep in mind North Korea's persistently liberal use of the word success. Other successes this month include the Pyongyang Comedy Festival and Kim Jong-un's new fitness DVD. But it isn't all business. On Thursday, Russia opened its first ferry service to North Korea, allowing tourists to visit the country. Ah, Russians, the only people in the world who could consider North Korea a relaxing getaway. On board, the vessel will offer entertainment, restaurants, and even bars, presumably to imprison foreign journalists. The ferry is to travel across the adjacent Sea of Japan, making it the only thing that's ever been in danger of getting hit by a North Korean missile. The Russian company in charge of the service is going to great lengths to attract customers, even promising North Korean dignitaries a personal welcome in Vladivostok from a famous Russian celebrity. Over to China now, where, according to campaigners, the Yulin Dog Eating Festival will this year be banned from selling dog meat, leaving very little to do at a dog-eating festival. However, it is expected that some restaurants in the city will ignore the ban and continue to sell Big Macs regardless. The Yulin Dog Eating Festival has been the subject of international disapproval for years now. Last June, a petition calling for the event to be stopped collected 11 million signatures worldwide, most of them paw prints. The consumption of dog meat is still technically legal in China. Gay marriage, however, is not, because that would be gross. Why should man marry his best friend when he could eat him? I'm Phil Wang for Unspun. 祝你好胃口. Oh, quite good. It was good. Not bad.
Thanks, Phil. After the break, as we all struggle to comprehend this week's terrible events in Manchester, how should our politicians respond to the latest terrorist attack? I'll be joined by someone who knows, former Home Secretary Jacqui Smith. Welcome back to Unspun. Now it's time for my special guest. She was the first ever woman to be Home Secretary and the first Home Secretary to publish a counter-terror strategy. Please welcome Jacqui Smith. Jacqui, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're very grateful that you could be with us, and it's a shame, really, that we're having to discuss politics in such a time. But you obviously have real personal experience in this area of being Home Secretary, and on day 2 of your new role under Gordon Brown, there was the terror attack in Glasgow and the car bombs found in London that led to the terror threat being raised from severe to critical. Yeah. That's the situation we find ourselves in now. As Home Secretary, dealing with a scenario like this, talk us through, firstly, who gives you the information and what happens in those immediate minutes and hours?
Well, I mean, that is the first thing you need to do. You need to try and get the best idea possible about what's happening. And certainly in my case, I can remember going into the office actually on the first day that I took over, and one of the officials coming into the office and saying to me, "Minister, when you see me, it's not going to be good news," and talking about what was known at that point about that terror attack. So your first job as Home Secretary is really to try to gather together the people who are going to tell you what you need to know. So Theresa May quite rightly has chaired a COBRA committee. COBRA stands for Cabinet Office Briefing Room A in the Cabinet Office. And what you do there is you essentially bring together the security agencies, the police, other people who are likely to know what's going on, and you get an understanding of what the situation is. And as we've seen, tragically, with the events in Manchester this week, actually, those can be quite fast-moving, and understanding the situation and what needs to be done is your first role, really.
In terms of the terror threat and either increasing it or decreasing it, that's MI5's decision. Are politicians consulted at all on that?
No, and I think some of the comment this week about the fact that somehow or another the raising of the terror threat has been a political move is wrong and is ill-informed. There's a part of MI5 that actually brings together a whole range of different people called the Joint Terrorism Analysis Centre that looks at all that information and the intelligence, and it decides what that threat level should be. And I think, as we've seen today, given that it seems likely that the terrorist in Manchester was not acting alone, may well have been part of a network, raising the threat level to critical seems to make sense, because critical, of course, means that actually another terror attack is imminent, is potentially imminent.
That's very scary for people to hear. And obviously over the last few days, watching Theresa May and other members of the government and the security services deliver that message, it's hard not to feel chilled to the core watching it. What can the public do in their day-to-day lives to satisfy themselves that they're not going to be victims?
Well, the first thing is actually, I think we need to be reassured by the quality of the security agencies and the counter-terror police that we have in this country. That when you start as Home Secretary, unlike in other ministerial jobs, you don't necessarily know a lot of detail about the people, particularly the security agencies that you're going to work with. I have to say my first reaction, and it stayed with me through the whole of the time that I was Home Secretary, is that we should be grateful for those people and the efforts that they put in place. So the first thing to say is we are blessed with some extremely good, dedicated, brave people who are protecting us. And incidentally, you know, despite the tragedy this week, actually they have foiled very many attacks. But there is a role for the public. I think, you know, there is lots of information out there about if you see suspicious things, what you should do. I think the most important thing, Matt, and you were absolutely right at the beginning, is that we need to go about our daily lives. Actually, you know, the role of security in government is to enable people to do all the other things that they want to do, to work, to have fun, to live their lives, in the way, of course, tragically, that people were doing on Monday evening. And actually, that is what the terrorists are trying to disrupt, young people going about their lives and having fun. And the job of security is to allow us actually to get on with our lives.
The public have an easy relationship, don't they, with some of the principles that go along with security. We want to be protected, but we don't want to feel that our freedoms are being infringed. Where do you think that the line should be drawn between liberty and, for instance, surveillance?
I mean, I don't necessarily think, you know, I know we quite often talk about these things as being, you know, some sort of seesaw and, you know, you either have one or you have the other. I mean, actually, part of my argument is, unless we can be secure in our lives, unless we can be confident as we can be, that we're being protected as well as we can be, we actually don't have the liberty to do the things that we want to do, to live in the way that we want to live in this country. So, of course, there are going to be times when people will feel, oh, do I really need to go through that search process? Am I confident about whether or not if the government needs to listen to my phone calls or intercept other communications, they're doing that in a responsible way? I mean, the fact that we live in a free country is part of why we have those arguments and those debates.
The big issue that seems to face us security terms is British-born terrorists travelling to places like Libya and Syria, coming back and committing atrocities. How can the government tackle that?
One of the key elements of the counter-terror strategy that it's sort of built around what are called the 4 Ps, so pursuing terrorists, protecting ourselves and preparing for terrorist attacks. But perhaps the most significant and important of those is what's called prevent. And that has been in place since actually before I was Home Secretary. And what that says is, look, there is people become radicalised to carry out the sort of hideous attacks that we've seen this week. And actually, if we can prevent that happening in the first place, that will prevent the terrorism that has such tragic consequences and that we're all now trying to deal with. It's not easy. It's one of the most difficult public policy issues. But actually, there has been a lot of work already done on prevent. But in the end, I think what we also need to do, and others have been talking about this today, is we need to be willing to challenge a perverse ideology that sees the sorts of Western freedoms and values that we take for granted as being something that deserves terror attack and which feels justified in doing it. So I think actually it needs a sort of honest argument, and it needs support of those voices who are challenging that ideology, to actually be strengthened to be able to do that.
There's also a challenge, isn't there, in terms of how people react, is that sadly this can sow more division, and there's one thing in challenging a perverse ideology that turns people into the sort of killers that we've seen, and people using that as an amber light or a green light to be disrespectful to wider communities. What hope do you have actually that in the future, and hopefully in the near future, we'll be able to sort of have a society where we can tackle radical Islamic fundamentalism without moderate Muslims being targeted? Well,
actually, you know, part of my argument for why we needed to to tackle that was because when we have a terrible terror attack like we've seen this week, we have the 22 immediate victims, and then we also, as you rightly say, have that sort of division in society. And sometimes actually it is moderate Muslims going about their everyday lives who are the victims of hate attacks and of the sort of vitriol that we wouldn't want to see. I think the answer to that is what we've seen in Manchester this week, frankly. You know, people standing together, people saying, actually, that we have more in common than that divides us, that we're a strong city and country and we're not going to be torn apart by this. And actually, we will come together in response to this terror attack, whatever our religious background or political background, and we will tackle it because that is what we have in common and that is how we need to address this challenge.
Jacqui, I'm sure the vast majority of people will completely agree. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today. I know it's not the easiest circumstances to do an interview in. Thank you so much for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, Jacqui Smith. That's all we've got time for tonight. We're here every Wednesday and Sunday until the election, interviewing candidates and political figures from all parties. Now to play us out with a Manchester classic, it's MP4.
Slip inside the eye of your mind. Don't you know you might find a better place to play? You said that you'd never seen, but all the things that you'd seen will slowly fade away. Gonna start a revolution from my bed, because you said the brains I had went to my head. Step outside, the summertime's in bloom. Stand up beside the fireplace, take that look from off your face, 'cause you ain't ever gonna burn my heart out. So Sally can wait, she knows it's too late as she's walking on by. Her soul slides away, but don't look back in anger, don't look back in anger. I heard her say